Welcome to Healthy Conversations, sharing the knowledge, experience, stories, and the wisdom of herbalists and other natural healers, with your host, Stephen Horn. Today's guest, KhadiYah Preciado. I have KhadiYah with me again. I mentioned that I found her YouTube channel and website and really enjoyed her approach to herbs. And one of the things I like about her, and also anybody who I really think is a good professional herbalist, is there's this tendency for an amateur to, okay, I've got a disease. What's the herb that's going to cure it? So there's some problems with that. You want to just get the conversation started, tell what you see as a problem with just trying to match an herb to a disease.
Right. Yeah. There's so many different ways you can even go with that. I know my people who watch me know that I always say it's not about what herb or what can I use for, but it's more about the how and the why. So just even for something simple, the average person will get 2 colds a year. That's a statistic. And so, but every cold for even the same person is not even the same. You may have different symptoms. And then, there's like a dozen or more symptoms that you can have. So what might be beneficial for this person that has a cold, and they may have congestion along with it, and they may have a fever, may be different from this person who may have a dry cough, et cetera. So it even changes, I say, in the different stages of illness that you have as well. So you might use something when you feel like a scratchy throat, or just like your nose is feeling like a little bit runny. You might use something in that instance, and then you might use something if you actually have a full-blown cold or cough, flu, etc. And then also if you have a fever or something like that. So it just always changes, and there's no one size fits all. And so that's why I always say, when people say, that this herb doesn't work for me, I always say that all of the herbs, quote unquote, work, but it's just for the right situation. So it might not be beneficial for you right now, but later on in life, you may have something where you're using this herb and you do actually see the changes that you're looking for. So it definitely. And then I always remind people too, even if you go to doctor, you may know what you have in your head, but they're going to still have you fill out the forms. You still got to talk to the nurse, and she's going to ask you questions about what you put on the form. And then you talk to the doctor, and he's going to ask you again as well. And so with herbalists, we also should be asking lots of questions, probing questions, to get more understanding of what's going on. And then I also like to get people to explain how, in their own words, how it feels to them. So if they're having pain, what type of pain, what does it feel like? Or if they're having illnesses, is it something that happens every year at this certain time, this certain season or certain part of the year? So all those things can drastically change what herb you might recommend, or what a formula looks like for each person.
Yeah, well, I think what people miss is that the herb has action on the body, and that action is pretty consistent. If you take cayenne pepper and you put some cayenne pepper in your mouth, it's pretty much going to act the same from one person to the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a burning sensation, blood's going to rush up to your head, you might sweat on your forehead, et cetera.
Right.
So the question isn't what is the herb doing, it's when is it appropriate to do that, right? And like you said, the beginning stages of a cold can be different than the later stages of a cold. And usually at the beginning, people have thinner, watery mucus, and later it's more thick and congealed. And so you'd want to use different kinds of remedies depending on what those different kinds of symptoms are. When you're sitting down and approaching working with someone, what kinds of things are you looking for? You mentioned in our previous interview that you kind of see people match to the personalities of the plants. So you want to tell us a little bit about how you think about matching the people to the plant?
Yeah, I guess that's just the way that I see a lot of things. Like even when I'm making a blend, I'm imagining in my mind what the combination is going to taste like, and those different things. So that's just something, I guess, that is a way that I learn, or I associate. I do something and then I have that memory, and it's just kind of like visual in my mind. As you interact with more people, you see different personalities, and you may see different personalities often, and then you just makes you think of a certain plant. And also I pay attention in the garden to different plants and how they even interact with each other, and that can tell you different things too about the type of person that it might be beneficial for. Just like the chamomile and how it's I think of it as the mother of plants because of how nurturing it is, because it can revive sickly plants that are around it. And so if a person needs that type of personality or that type of energy, then that might be something that can be beneficial to them. So I guess it's always about just observing different things, making mental notes, listening a lot of times, and just kind of learning. And I'm always inquisitive of why or how. So, why does this plant look this way, or why does it act this way, and so just letting the imagination kind of roam. And that's how you can actually really make some really good connections, when you're just always how children are. Why, but why? And if you keep asking yourself that, then you really actually, a lot of times you can get like a deep revelation from that.
Most people have been had that trained out of them, right?
Yes.
Their curiosity, their natural instinct to want to learn and understand has been kind of suppressed, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I have small children, and even I'm guilty of it myself sometimes when they ask why. So, and just being in this generation, now I can say, well, let's watch a video and see, how. So they'll say, how? Well, how are grits made? And once I give them the basic answer, we'll go and we'll watch something, and then we might talk about it. So yeah, that is something that from childhood, from our experiences with other people, things that they say, it can kind of change, where we stop experimenting, we stop asking why, being curious, and those different things. But those things are really what is natural ways of learning. And so I think that we have to go back to it. That's why I'm always about just intuition. Think, how does it actually feel when when you look at a blend? How do you know that it's done? You can feel like it's complete. You're looking at it and you can tell that it is, a blend that's really powerful. And I like to also, a lot of times I like to be quiet, but sometimes I'll listen to gospel music, and I'm just like praying, but usually just more inside my head. Take a day to marinate actually on each person. And I do that because what I'm thinking initially, sometimes it may change a little bit as I have more time to marinate on it. Whereas I'm pulling herbs, sometimes the herb that's behind it, it just kind of like, oh yeah. And so I think it's just a balance of just really just being open, just open to learn, and just really curious.
One of the reasons I'm curious about how you approach that is because I am trying to write a book on plant energetics and
Oh,
the way I see it. And I think in terms of vibrations, there's energies, like the color is an energy, the shape has a certain energy, the way it grows has a certain energy, just like people have a certain energy. There are people who are
right,
very hot and agitated and let it go, and there
right,
are people who are like really quiet and
right,
withdrawn, and so it's learning to observe these things and let them communicate to you. But it's a communication like when you're listening to a piece of music or looking at a painting.
right.
It's a communication that isn't coming in words. It's coming in something that you sense inside of yourself that's hard to put into words sometimes.
And even like you mentioned, plants are like that too. There's certain plants where when if you sit out and you ever watch coneflower, every single insect known to man is going to be on that coneflower. And sometimes I've seen them even fighting for territory, bees and spiders and, all different types of things. Whereas there's other plants that really, don't get bothered as much. And so even with that, there's an energy that draws every single thing, and it's from the different shapes also of the coneflower. And that's also the way the creator designed different colors attract different insects and different patterns. It's all for them to be drawn to it. And even people are drawn to the energy as well. Like we talked about, what you need is right there, and often the plant will kind of make an appearance. So like there's different plants that I thought that I didn't have growing in my backyard, but when I needed it, then all of a sudden, oh, that I actually do have this plant. It was hiding behind there, or it just kind of just shows itself. Like I always talk about when I was foraging. The Oregon brick that we have here in Tennessee. I can't remember the variety, but it said that it doesn't even grow here, and they say that it's invasive. And so if someone does see it, they want to pull it up. Well, I just turned around and it was just big and bold right in front of me. And so I feel like that the plant just kind of popped up because it wanted me to see it. It knew that I needed it. And so just like I think about in the Bible about how, what was her name? It was Ishmael's mother. I can't remember her name. Was it Zipporah? Something like that. But she was crying because there was no water, and then she opened her eyes and then there was a water. And so sometimes things are there and we just can't see them until then we actually need to. So
I have an interesting story about that. I was working with a lady. I do emotional healing as well as our herbal stuff, and she told this story about when she was a little girl and in Mexico, and she was taken in by I think it was an aunt or uncle or some other relative when can't remember what happened to her parents, but they made her carry these pails of gasoline, open pails of gasoline for their tortilla oven. And as she would carry them as a little girl, it would splash on her belly. She'd had digestive troubles over and over again for most of her life, because that stuff absorbs through your skin and gets into your body. So as I was sitting listening to her, this chaparral came to mind. The plant chaparral just kept coming into my head. And I told her, I think you should try chaparral. She says, well, there's a chaparral plant that grows she lived in Arizona, chaparral plant growing in the median of the street in front of her house. And she says, I feel it's been calling to me, but I didn't want to harvest it because of the gasoline fumes. And I said, there you have it.
Right. Sometimes the answer right in front of you.
The answer's right in front of you. This plant handles gasoline fumes. This plant, in fact, it smells like road tar in a certain way. So do you have any other examples like you could share of something that's happened to you like that, where you've had a plant that just seemed just right for the circumstance? I'm sure you've had many, but could you think of one?
Also, recently, I don't want to, a family member, I'll say, they felt like in their relationship they were missing, connection and different things like that. And so that's also when I had first discovered the cleavers. And so one of the things about the cleavers, the flowers are very tiny, and we know that the plant cleaves to you. But, energy wise, that there's a connection to it being used for people who have trouble connecting and attaching themselves to people. So they have attachment issues. So that's another plant. So I say that it was growing for me, but it also was growing for other members in my family. And this year, it has really taken over everything. So I guess there's even more people that need to find that really need the cleavers.
Yeah, that's interesting because it does stick together when you.
Yeah, and it sticks to bare skin as well.
Yeah,
I was just
the minute you touch it, it's like you got the stickiness of it.
Yeah, and I can understand clothes, but to stick to your bare skin, it's just amazing. And so,
right. Okay, so let's just take another. We mentioned chamomile. You mentioned the chamomile helps other plants in the garden to grow better.
Yes,
I've never observed that, but that's very interesting. So, what else do you see about the personality of chamomile? Now, it might match with something.
I find also just the colors of a lot of our plants that are usually associated, I would say, with women or with children, certain colors as well, just like the yellow, the sunniness and stuff about them as well. And so I think that they're also like the plants that children are also drawn to as well naturally. They like the bright colors. They're inviting as well. And so that's another thing that I've noticed just about those particular herbs as well. And then a lot of times they're also very useful also for the skin as well. And I like to also, that was one of the ways that I actually learned to think differently about herbs, is because I always wondered, why do they have certain colors? And so I had prayed because I wanted to understand more about herbs, and it just wasn't sticking. I had tried many times to learn about herbs, but with anything with memory, it always just goes out of your head, unless you're beating it into your head every single day. And so I wondered about the colors. I know that, everything, and I always say that creation has a design. Just like, every painter or artist, they have their signature. And so the creator has their signature as well. And so he didn't make all these different colors for no reason. And so when I was looking more into it, I had learned about, the plant chemicals or constituents that give the color. So the anthocyanins, the carotenoids, the different chlorophyll, all of the different things that give the plant their color. And so then I noticed different patterns about certain colors. You see them all the time when you are in need of certain things. And so I've noticed that about the yellow plants as well. A lot of times they're very beneficial for the skin as well.
Great. Well, if you'd like to learn more about her approach to herbs, and she's got some great videos on her YouTube channel and some great material on our website too, and we'll put the links in the description below. And thank you for joining me today. It's been a very interesting discussion. And so we'll catch you again in a later episode.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to catch future episodes of Healthy Conversations. Help us educate others by sharing this video, and please feel free to share your own thoughts, comments, and questions below. To learn more, check out the links below.